Okay, this is a miracle. It's 2 days in a row for what's on my workbench. Um, so I decided I was looking back at the original order I had for this, and I said I'd be replacing the capacitors. And even though these have been technically been replaced, I'm going to go ahead and replace these caps anyway because it's just pretty hideous work here. So what I did do is I got one of my favorite suppliers is Council 5. I don't get any money from them, but I find them very consistent in terms of quality of capacitors and I like how they package things and they have nice little organized packing lists for what's in there, and I've never had any problems with it. So what I did was I took them all out of the bag and organized everything in this nice little container and actually labeled all the bins. I split them all off by capacitance and by voltage. Um, so it makes it much easier. The slowest part of doing all this is finding the capacitor in the bunch. Capacitors are always have two ratings. Um, well, electrolytics do at least. Well, they all do, but a little bit of science lesson here, engineering lesson is capacitors. They're rated in farads, um, which is how much charge they can hold in an electric field. So you'll see, let's show you, electrolytic capacitors. They look like little cans. They actually call them cans. If you look at electrolytic capacitor, there you'll always see two numbers on there. That's 100 microfarads. It's not a U, it's the mu sign. So it's 100 microfarads, which is how much charge it can hold. And then 25 volts is the breakdown rating. So if you go over the breakdown rating, capacitors work by there's a oh dear a the how a capacitor works is just, oh, I hate this camera. It's just two pieces of metal separated by an insulator. In electrolytics, there's actually electrolyte, which is a liquid between them, so they literally will dry out. There's also tantalum and ceramic disc capacitors, but the concept's the same. You have two pieces of metal separated by insulator, and you put voltage on one side, and an electric field will hold the charge in there for years, decades actually, if it's a well-made cap. If you apply too high, if you say you put like a 6.3 volt capacitor in a 25 volt line, what could happen is you'll actually arc across the insulator and destroy the capacitor. That can happen, and that's why you always pay attention to that second number for the rating. So I'm gonna go through and start pulling some of these caps off and replacing them. Start with C13 down here. See, the Master System's a little bit weird. I'm sorry, the Game Gear is a slightly strange beast. Oh my god, there's so much solder on here. Lord. There's so much solder on this. There's actually two giant beads of solder on here, as you can see. Right there, those are two giant beads of solder, and there shouldn't be that much. I'll show you. One of my favorite tools is the solder sucker. So let's get it in there. Pull up the extra solder. A little bit of safety if you ever do work with solder. You don't know if it's got lead in it. Assume it does. Wash your hands after you're done. So, just want to get just enough solder on there to be able to beat it right. So you look on the, you actually install electrolytic capacitors. The polarity really matters, because what will happen is if you hook them up backwards, hydrogen will form an electrolyte because there's water in the electrolyte, and hydrogen gas will form, and eventually it will explode and pop. The lid of it will pop off. So I put just enough solder on there to work with now. And if you look on the board itself, let's see if I can get in here. That little plus sign, that's the positive. And on electrolytic capacitors, the stripe is always negative. There's a stripe on there with a negative sign on it. That's the stripe. So the stripe is negative. So this is a either a 100 or a 10. I'm guessing it's probably 100, but I can't quite tell actually. That's why I use a microscope. It's only a 10 microfarad 16 volt. So I'll go on my box. 10 microfarad 16 volt. Organizing your stuff ahead of time will save you a lot of headache in terms of trying to figure out what to do. Stay organized. Saves you a lot of time in the long run. Oh, look, my camera's out of focus again. Shocking. Okay. So what you want to do is there's I can see the positive marking on here. So the negative is facing me, so I'm going to have the stripe facing towards me. I'm going to bend down these leads gently to form them to approximately where the pads were originally. Check the spacing. Looks pretty good. And trim them down a little bit. Butterfingers, pick you up. If you're afraid of burning yourself, there's no shame in using a, oh gosh, darn it, twice now. Get out of there. Okay. There's no shame in using a pair of, needing those pliers to hold it in place. So tack down one side. I'll never understand why they went so gunga din on all that solder. You don't need that much. So you're gonna do it nice. See, I'll show you. This is the one I just installed here. A lot less solder, a lot cleaner. I mean, it's not perfect. I can put a little more heat on the one, which I think I will. There we go. A little more heat. That's better. I was not happy with it, so I applied a little more heat to it. And this is the cleaner. It doesn't look great under the microscope, but trust me, it's a lot cleaner looking than the other ones that are on here with these giant blobs. Let's go through and do the rest. So I'm just gonna pry it up. Oh, so much solder. Why? Oh, I can smell the rosin. Whew. It's so much solder, it's actually hard to do. I don't usually have to do this. Just so much solder on the board, I can't even get it off. There we go. So what are you? You are a 33 6.3 volt. Yeah, like I was saying last time, kind of been sad watching the downfall of Classic Game Room. It was one of the first internet channels that really focused on game reviews. I mean, it's even before YouTube, many years before YouTube. So, stripe away from me. So I'm just going to bend the leads. Trim those down a little bit. Don't worry if you are ever doing a cap replacement and you notice, oh my goodness, why is this capacitor so much smaller than the one I removed? Because sometimes what it is just the technology has improved over the years, so there's a better insulators, so they don't need to be quite as large, physically large capacitors to do the same job. So you'll see it. I mean, you'll see like this one's quite a bit smaller than the one I just pulled out. It's about half the size actually, but that's normal. Alright, but yeah, with Mark and his channel, now he's reviewing paper and pens. He's not even like drawing stuff per se. He's just reviewing art supplies, which I don't see the cross marketing on that one very much. And some of them are just like, if you were a person coming for reviewing art supplies, you'd be very disappointed. And if you're looking for a classic game review, you're going to be disappointed. If you're looking for 80s comics, you're going to be disappointed. Like, you're just going to... My best advice to be just pick a genre and run with it. Don't keep messing around. I mean, I can understand you losing your passion for something, but I'm not happy with the solder joint here. There we go. Okay. That's better. So yeah, there's something to be said for following your passions, and there's something to be said for actually making money at something. So I'll knock those two out. Maybe I'll hit these two over here. Pretty sure these are the same capacity. Well, maybe not, I can't remember. For you, you are a 1035. 1035. I'll go with 50, I guess. You can always go up in voltage, you just can't go down. If you put a 50 in a 35, but you can't put a 35 in a 50. Unless you feel like popping. Okay, you are striped towards me. So again, I'm just forming the legs to try to match up. I eyeball the spacing up on the board itself. There we go. It should do. So you can actually see, as I'm working on this, how long it actually takes to do a recap job. It takes a bit. It's not like a 5-minute procedure, that's for sure. Yeah, they had too much heat there before, but that's alright. No harm done. Well, that one was barely on there. turn my iron down just a hair. Okay. This one is a 1035, so I'll put another 1050 in there. I thought they were the same voltage, the same capacity. You'll find soldering is a combination of heat. It's a trifecta of heat, material, and solder. Stripe towards me again. I'm always amazed. You can go from having 500,000, I think over 500,000 subscribers on a channel, to losing hundreds or even thousands a month because, well, you're just not going to hold people's interest anymore. You're just going to unsubscribe because it's not something they want. Like this YouTube channel, I don't expect anyone to watch it. Not really. This is more for myself and for my website. Is I don't depend, my videos aren't even monetized, I think, because I think you need like 5,000 subscribers, and I forget how many views a month are like the minimum for it. It's pretty ridiculous, actually, and I'm just I don't need to worry about doing that. I have a day job, so it's not really crucial to my existence. Oh, I cut the leads a little short. Oh well. There we go. I don't really need to worry about YouTube views and clicks and subscribers and stuff like that, because this is just a hobby of mine. And I could see how if your hobby becomes a chore, how you'd be tired of it and want to get out. But just be honest with people. Say, you know what, I don't feel it anymore, man. I'm done, and move on. That way, you're not going to piss anyone off. Maybe you can hand off the channel to somebody who's going to appreciate it. But no, you're going to crank out 1-minute vertical videos that everyone hates. I can't stand vertical videos, personally. I think they look terrible. This shows that you're filming it on a cell phone. I mean, here, I'm not even using anything fabulous. I'm just using just a webcam for this. If I was really serious, I'd haul out my SLR and take videos that way. But again, I'm not a professional channel. I think the only thing I did do is I did add there's an umbrella light sitting behind me right now. They get a little bit more even lighting on the bench top here. I mean, my equipment, I think I spent like a whopping like $80 on everything. The only thing I'm really not happy with is this camera up here. Has manual focus, but by some miracle it actually drifts. Go figure. This is what are you? 0.47 50 volts. It's a very low capacitance but very high voltage. And here you are. Well, like I said, technology changes. This is the old cap here. That's the one I just pulled. And this is the new one that's going in. It's half the size. I have a sneaking suspicion these are not expensive caps in here. That they were replaced with originally. What are you? You are. What brand are you? I don't even know what brand you are. That's so odd. There's also a third rating on lots of caps, and that's the temperature rating. You rarely run into a situation where that matters, to be honest. Unless they're doing military hardware. Which I could tell you if I work in military hardware, but I'd have to kill you all. sucks sometimes. You can't really say what you're working on sometimes. See, that cap originally was facing the other direction. Oh, hokey, hokey, hokey. That's alright. I'll put it in backwards like they did, I guess. So I just don't have the room. I might in a minute. Oh, this. It really is. It's a shame. It was entertaining while it was around. This leg is not very long. Of all things, my microphone cable's in the way. My microphone's actually to my left here. It says mono though. Not my best solder job, but it'll do, pig. Okay. Wow, that's a lot of solder. Yikes. So much I gotta pull it up and put a new bead down. There we go. Another cap. This is also a .4750. Why did they use two different caps for that? Well, that's strange. Okay, .4750. .4750. Giddy up then. It's almost was a certainly part of the high voltage circuit for the fluorescent tube here. Back in the day, that's what they did before LED backlighting, was fluorescent tubes. Now you can do electroluminescent, or you can do fluorescent, or you can use LEDs with a diffuser, so you don't have to worry about the fluorescent tube going out. The problem with fluorescent tubes is they took high voltage, because you have to basically fluorescent tubes it's filled with mercury vapor, and when it ignites it releases ultraviolet light, and the ultraviolet light hits the phosphorus and the phosphorus glows. So it's your second science lesson for the day, how a fluorescent tube works. The problem is, even with this gap here, you need something like, I think, probably 7,000 or 8,000 electron volts to cross that. It basically sparks. There's a element on each end, like a piece of tungsten that heats up, that propagates from. Of course, the other problem with LEDs is fluorescence is the fact that they use mercury, and mercury is quite toxic, which is why one of the big reasons they've been switching over to LEDs is because all those compact fluorescents were eventually going to be they are a kind of a environmental landmine waiting to go off. Plus, you do get a bit of ultraviolet off of there, and the lighting's a little bit harsh. There we go. It's easier to control the color temperature on a LED. Alright, let's see how we're doing here. So sloppy, so sloppy, so sloppy. Oh. Darn, it's so bad. There's so much flux. There's so much solder on these joints. It's ridiculous. Just piled up. It's hard to see in the camera view, but oh, there's so much solder there. This is a 4.750. 4.750. And then the stripe is going to face me. From what I've read, Mark is the son of a gentleman who created a product that Autodesk eventually bought out, and that's how they made their fortune. His dad did. So I don't think the son has had to work incredibly hard during his life. So, and that kind of shows occasionally in the videos. When you led a privileged life, how you complain about your viewers. I mean, I tried reading one of his books, like how to be I think unsubscribed was the name of it, and it was just, oh, would whiny be a good term? Or just privileged? I don't know what the better term would be. Okay. I need to pause. Okay, so I had to take a bit of break there. Life gets busy. So let's see, what was this? This is a 2216 volt. Oh. Getting back to the whole classic game room thing, I think the saddest part now is the comment section on his current videos are far better than the content of his videos, which is saying a lot. I think part of the problem is he works alone, which is fine. I work alone. But when you're in the entertainment field, you probably want to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, have a different personality. I mean, that's why I'm not planning on making a career out of what's on my workbench in YouTube, because it's just not. I mean, I can do game reviews with my brother, but doing it by myself, I just know it'd be so incredibly boring that no one would ever really want to watch. I might be wrong. Maybe people like watching me talking to myself for an hour. There we go. So we got another cap done. There's only 1, 2, 3, 3 left on here. Let's see, what do we got here? Oh, more solder. Yikes. probably not the most entertaining viewing ever, I would say. This is just some guy resoldering, recapping a board, but I guess if you've never done it before, maybe it is interesting. I don't know. What do we got here? This is a 106.3. Maybe this is the most fascinating thing in the world. Kind of doubt it, but it's probably still more entertaining to watch somebody do a review on a pen. Not a very in-depth review, just a review. It's a pen. It writes. Great. So I'm just going to finish off this recap tonight. And then I'm going to partially put it back together again, make sure I didn't break anything. And then I'm going to go and redo the power and soundboard tomorrow, and then install the AV mod. It's just a very exacting mod. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a little bit touchy at times. I might actually have to use the microscope on here for a bit of me seeing what the heck to do. Let's deal with the heat. Hold on. The problem is when you solder, the tip is several hundred degrees, and it can get a little bit warm. Let's clean fillet. I've never had to pull solder up like this before. It's so much solder, it's almost to the point you barely have to add new solder back to it when I pull it up. Even with the solder sucker. Some people use solder wick. I can never get into it. It never gets enough solder up, in my opinion. The only dangerous thing with the solder sucker is if you're not proficient in it, you can accidentally rip up traces. 68, 35. Where's the 68? There it is. So you can accidentally go and stripe towards me here. Accidentally go and pull up if it's a really old board, like something from the earlier part of the 80s. You have to be, or if it's a not very well made system in the first place, like a Gamecom, like a Tiger Gamecom. What happens is the traces on the board are so delicate, it's very easy to damage them. By the way, I'm on an ESD mat, so in case you're wondering, not that it really matters. I'll put the full strap on my wrist when I actually install the board itself, just to make sure. ESD, electrostatic discharge, you can get latent failures with it, so you want to be mindful of it. My workbench here is grounded, and I do use this as an ESD mat, and I test it every now and then just to be sure. Okay, what do we got left here? $4.750. Not a lot left. I'll tell you what, I'm getting tired. I think I'm going to stop for now. And I'll just post this as my what's on my workbench for the day. I'm a little concerned about. See, I did this one already. I'm getting in here. I'm gonna go knock it off and be done with it. It's right here. cheap solder. Lots of rosin. Lots of flux in here. Well, let me finish off this last cap, I guess, and then we'll be good for the night. So, let's see, what were you? You are a 106.3. 106.3 again. Another one. And where's the positive? Man, there's so much solder. I don't even know where the positive's at. Holy moly. Hold on. It's probably under here. No, I guess I'll take a look at the old one, see where the stripe is at. Stripe is to the right. Okay. That's how much solder they have on the board and how much flux is on this board. I wish I had some flux cleaner right now to clean it up. I don't usually have any because I don't use flux, so I don't really need flux cleaner to clean up flux. That makes sense. Man, there's so much flux on here. It's just brown all over the place. That's why I gave up and actually tip that up a little bit so you can see a little better. That's why I gave up and decided to change the caps anyway, because I don't know of the quality of all this. Ugh, the smell of it too. Ugh. Alright, so that's all done. Let's see if it still works. Sound. I'll be pulling this board up tomorrow. They burnt at least two of the connectors. See the V. And then I'll replace the rest of the caps tomorrow. But for now, I'll make sure I didn't break anything. Over and there we go. Turn the brightness up a little bit so you can see it. Oh, it's actually really hard to see it in this light. So it's working still. Alright, that's a good sign. It still works. Didn't break anything. It's always good. So, tomorrow I will go through and replace those final caps on there. And then we'll have a final show and tell and be done with it. And then I'll start soldering in that little board. It's a neat little board. Let's see if I got it close by. I like to keep everything in one container together so it doesn't get lost anywhere. I'll review my video later and see if I replaced those or not. I might have. I can't tell. Alright, so these are this little guy here. These are little boards that I had to order from Australia. And they have, you have to hook in there's a bunch of data lines you got to hook in. Data 0, 1, 2, 3. And then horizontal sync. And then there's, I forget what the PC stands for. Sync, voltages, ground. Then the output side you have CY. Red, green, ground, composite signal CS75, so that's 75 ohm composite signal. So yeah, so I'll end up doing is it'll be when you're done, you mount it right here down on the underneath the cartridge port, and you just take a nice you take some double-sided tape basically, and you mount it down there. And what I'm going to do is have, because I want to composite out, drill a hole in the housing here and use a tip ring sleeve connector, so which is nice because it gives you a nice clean just one hole in the case, so you don't have to drill multiple holes, and it's almost flush with the case, so you don't have to see a big ugly RCA connector sticking out the bottom. So they do include this connector like they use in a Sega Genesis, but not always needed. This particular patron of mine, really, I don't think he wants it with this connector. He wants it just with a composite out, like again, like classic Game Room's version. So what I'll end up doing is I'll show you the connector. Where's it at? It's actually kind of cool. I did this on one other mod. I think it was an Atari, was it 52? No, I think it was a 7800 I was working on. And it's this little, nice little 3.5 millimeter plug here, jack here. So you got this little guy, which is nice because just like a old, like a portable DVD player or equipment like that, you just have this little connector sticking out with this one little jam nut on here, so you're only going to see very little sticking out, and you just plug in this cable here and you get yourself your audio video out. And what I'll end up doing is tapping in the right and left sound into this jack as well, so you can just plug it into regular TV and play it. So that's coming up, and for now that should do it for the night. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope I didn't bore you all to tears.